"I'm so sorry, Mom. I must have left your ticket at home," my daughter Amanda said, not quite meeting my eyes as the rest of the family shifted uncomfortably beside her. "You'll have to go back and wait until we can sort this out." I stood frozen in the bustling international terminal, my carefully packed suitcase at my feet, as the magnitude of what was happening slowly dawned on me. 3 generations of our family, Amanda, her husband Derek, and my teenage granddaughters Sophia and Olivia, were gathered for our long-planned European vacation. The trip I had contributed $35,000 toward. The trip we had discussed for months. "There must be some mistake," I said, pulling out my phone. "I can show them my confirmation email." "Mom, there's no confirmation email," Amanda interrupted, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she'd developed in recent years. "Remember? We handled all the bookings together since you're not good with technology." Derek checked his watch with exaggerated concern. "We really need to get through security, Amanda. Our flight leaves in 90 minutes. My granddaughters stood slightly behind their parents, Sophia staring intently at her phone while Olivia examined the floor tiles as if they contained the secrets of the universe. "I don't understand," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "I gave you my passport weeks ago to handle the arrangements." "Yes, and now we have a problem," Derek said with a sigh that suggested I was being difficult. "Look, Margaret, the best thing is for you to go home. Amanda will call the airline and sort everything out once we land in Paris. Maybe you can join us in a few days." A few days, which would mean missing the villa in Provence they had raved about booking, the first major stop on our itinerary. If you're watching it now, subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching it from. I'd love to know. "Let me just buy another ticket right now," I suggested, reaching for my credit card. "Surely there must be—" "Mom," Amanda cut me off sharply, then softened her tone with visible effort. "There are no available seats on this flight. We checked already, and the hotel arrangements for tonight in Paris are complicated too. It's better if you just go home and we'll figure it out. We'll keep you updated." As if to punctuate the finality of the decision, the airport loudspeaker announced their flight was beginning pre-boarding procedures. "We really have to go," Derek said, already turning away. "Come on, girls." My granddaughters finally looked up, murmuring quick goodbyes. Olivia, always the more sensitive one, darted forward to give me a hurried hug, whispering, "I'm sorry, Grandma," before being ushered away by her father's hand on her shoulder. I watched in stunned disbelief as they headed toward security, Amanda calling over her shoulder, "I'll text you when we land, don't worry." Standing alone in the departures hall, my suitcase suddenly seeming impossibly heavy beside me, I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest. This was no accident. The taxi ride home passed in a blur of confusion and hurt. I had withdrawn $35,000 from my retirement savings, money carefully accumulated during 40 years of teaching elementary school, to contribute to this family experience of a lifetime. Amanda had insisted I pay up front, saying it was simpler for their accounting and that Derek had found special deals if they paid for everything in advance. My modest house felt cavernous and accusing when I returned, still reeling from what had happened. On autopilot, I wheeled my suitcase into the bedroom and sat on the edge of my bed, trying to make sense of it all. That's when I noticed Amanda's tablet on my nightstand. She'd been using it the previous evening while sitting in my room as we discussed last-minute packing details. In her rush to leave this morning, she must have forgotten it. I picked it up, telling myself I just wanted to confirm my suspicions. The screen lit up without requiring a password. Amanda had always been careless with her devices. What I found shattered the last remnants of my denial. There in her email was a thread between her and Derek spanning months, meticulously planning how to secure my financial contribution, while ensuring I wouldn't actually join the trip. Screenshots of my bank transfer. Discussions about which excuse would be most believable. Derek suggesting they forget my ticket and passport at home. Amanda countering that using just the ticket would be more convincing since I'd be able to show my passport at the airport. "Mom's getting suspicious," Amanda had written 3 days ago. "She keeps asking to see the itinerary details. I told her the email confirmations went to your work address. Just keep her distracted until we're at the airport," Derek had replied. "Once we're through security, it won't matter what she suspects. Not like she'll make a scene in public. They knew me too well. My generation was raised not to make scenes, not to demand, not to confront." I scrolled further back, my hands shaking, and discovered something even more disturbing. This wasn't the first time. References to the same arrangement with your Aunt Patricia last year and how we handled your dad's brother on that cruise jumped out from the exchanges, suggesting a pattern of behavior I couldn't begin to comprehend. These were my children, my daughter whom I had raised, the man she had married who called me mom for the past 20 years, the granddaughters I had babysit and nurtured and loved fiercely. How could they do this? A new email notification popped up on the screen. From Derek to Amanda, sent just 30 minutes ago. Situation handled. Mom headed home. Did you remember to get your tablet from her house? It has all our correspondence about the arrangements. I set the tablet down carefully, as if it might explode. Then, with deliberation I didn't know I possessed, I took a screenshot of the incriminating email and sent it to my own email address. Then another and another, working methodically through their correspondence until I had documented everything. My hands were no longer shaking. The hurt was still there, a physical ache in my chest, but something else was emerging alongside it, something that felt strangely like strength. The tablet pinged again. Amanda, this time. Left tablet at Mom's. Will remote wipe when we land in Paris. She's not tech-savvy enough to find anything anyway. I stared at those words for a long moment. Not tech-savvy enough. The dismissal burned more than the theft itself somehow. My finger hovered over the power button, ready to shut down the tablet before they could remotely erase the evidence. But then a different idea formed, one that surprised me with its clarity and resolve. I carefully placed the tablet back exactly where I'd found it and reached for my phone instead. After staring at it for several seconds, I scrolled through my contacts until I found a number I hadn't called in years. The phone rang 3 times before a deep, familiar voice answered. Law Offices of Maxwell Sullivan. Max, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. It's Margaret Foster, Robert's widow. I need your help. There was a pause, then his tone warmed with recognition. Margaret? It's been years. Of course, what can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I need advice from the best fraud attorney I know, and I need it right now before a tablet in my possession is remotely wiped clean. I'm listening, he said. All business now. As I began explaining, I glanced at my packed suitcase, still sitting in the middle of my bedroom floor. I wouldn't be using it for a European vacation after all. I would be using it for something else entirely. Don't touch anything else on the tablet, Maxwell instructed over the phone, his voice shifting into the sharp, authoritative tone that had made him one of the most respected attorneys in the state. Can you bring it to my office immediately? Yes, I replied, already reaching for my car keys. I've sent myself screenshots of some conversations, but there's likely more I haven't found yet. Good thinking, Margaret, but we need to work quickly. These remote wipes can happen fast, once initiated. 40 minutes later, I sat across from Maxwell Sullivan in his corner office downtown. The years had been kind to him, his dark hair now silver at the temples, lines of experience framing his eyes, but the same keen intelligence I remembered from when he and my late husband had been colleagues and close friends. Our digital forensics specialist is creating a complete backup of the tablet's contents, he explained, handing me a cup of tea. Once that's secure, we'll let Amanda proceed with her remote wipe. Better she thinks she's destroyed the evidence. I nodded, still struggling to process the magnitude of what was happening. I can't believe they would do this, Max, my own daughter. Unfortunately, elder financial abuse is more common than most people realize, he said gently, and it's frequently perpetrated by family members. Elder? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. At 67, I hardly considered myself elderly. I was still teaching 3rd grade until last year. A flicker of a smile crossed his face. Legal terminology, Margaret. No offense intended. The door opened, and a young woman with a sleek ponytail and serious expression entered. We've secured everything, Mr. Sullivan. The backup is complete and verified. Thank you, Jen. Would you start the preliminary analysis? Focus on email threads going back at least 2 years, any financial records and references to other family members. He turned back to me as she left. Jen Watkins, best digital investigator I've ever worked with. If there's evidence on that tablet, she'll find it all. What happens now? I asked, setting my barely touched tea aside. Now we build a case, Maxwell replied, his expression hardening. What they've done crosses the line from family disagreement to criminal fraud. That $35,000 wasn't a gift. It was obtained under false pretenses with documented intent to deceive. Criminal? I repeated, a knot forming in my stomach. I don't want my granddaughters to see their parents arrested. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, he cautioned. There are multiple approaches we can take, ranging from civil action to criminal charges. But first, we need to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. As if on cue, Jen reappeared at the door, her expression grave. Mr. Sullivan, Mrs. Foster, you need to see this immediately. We followed her to a conference room where multiple screens displayed content from Amanda's tablet. Jen pointed to an open spreadsheet. This was buried in a hidden folder. It appears to be a tracking document of what they call family contributions. My blood ran cold as I scanned the document. Names of family members: my sister-in-law Patricia, Robert's brother William, my cousin Eleanor, followed by dates and amounts ranging from $15,000 to $50,000. Each entry included extraction method and story used. My God, Maxwell murmured. They've been running a systematic scheme. There's more, Jen continued, clicking to another file. These are bank statements for an account in the Cayman Islands. The deposits correlate exactly with the contributions listed in their tracking document. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. How much? I asked, my voice barely audible. Totaling all entries, Jen said, scrolling through the document. Approximately $340,000 over the past 3 years. The room seemed to tilt slightly. From family members? Our family? Maxwell placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. Margaret, this is extremely serious. This level of organized fraud across state lines, with offshore accounts involved, would trigger federal charges. The thought of Amanda in handcuffs, of my granddaughters watching their parents being taken away, sent a wave of nausea through me. Yet the methodical cruelty documented before me was undeniable. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment, but a calculated, ongoing operation targeting family members who trusted them. What about Derek's business? I asked suddenly, remembering how Amanda had often spoken about her husband's financial success as a real estate developer. They live in that big house, drive luxury cars. Surely they don't need to steal from family. Jen exchanged a glance with Maxwell before responding. Based on what I'm seeing in their financial records, the business is significantly leveraged. They're carrying enormous debt, and there are some concerning transactions that suggest possible mortgage fraud. Meaning, Maxwell explained carefully. They may be maintaining a facade of wealth while actually being in serious financial trouble. The money they've taken from family members might be propping up an increasingly unsustainable lifestyle. My phone buzzed with a text message. Amanda, landed in Paris. Gorgeous weather here. We'll call tomorrow with updates about your ticket situation. Don't worry. The casual cruelty of it, continuing the charade even now, crystallized something inside me. What are my options? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Maxwell leaned against the conference table, considering. We have several paths. Civil litigation to recover your money would be the simplest. Given the evidence, they'd likely settle immediately to avoid exposure. But that only addresses my situation, I pointed out. What about Patricia and the others? They don't even know they've been victimized. That's where criminal charges become relevant. Wire fraud, elder abuse, tax evasion. The list is substantial. With this evidence, the district attorney would almost certainly pursue the case. His expression softened slightly. But I understand your concerns about your granddaughters. I closed my eyes briefly, thinking of Sophia and Olivia, 17 and 15, at such vulnerable ages. The public humiliation of their parents' arrest and prosecution would be devastating. Is there a middle path? I asked finally. Maxwell studied me for a moment. Possibly. We could approach them privately with the evidence, demand full restitution to all affected family members, and require certain legal safeguards to prevent future incidents. The threat of criminal prosecution would be our leverage. Would that work? It might, he acknowledged. But there's no guarantee they'd comply long-term, and it leaves their other potential victims vulnerable. Jen, who had been quietly working at her computer, suddenly made a small sound of surprise. Mrs. Foster, there's something else you should see. She turned her screen toward us. I found a series of text messages between Derek and someone named Vincent Calabrese from about a month ago. The name struck me like a physical blow. Vincent Calabrese? Are you certain? Yes, Jen confirmed. They discuss a real estate development called Riverside Heights and reference a meeting at the Westbrook Country Club. Maxwell looked at me questioningly. You know this person? Vincent Calabresi is a developer with alleged connections to organized crime, I said slowly. Robert investigated some of his business dealings years ago when he was working in the district attorney's office. It was a major case. Threats were made. Robert was concerned enough that we temporarily moved to stay with friends. And now Derek is doing business with him, Maxwell said grimly. It looks that way. I stared at the screen, memories flooding back of that frightening period, of Robert's grim expression as he worked late into the night, building a case he called bigger than just financial crimes. The case against Calabresi fell apart when a key witness disappeared, I added quietly. Robert was devastated. He always believed Calabresi was behind it, but couldn't prove it. Maxwell and Jen exchanged significant looks. This complicates things considerably, he said. If Derek is involved with Calabresi's operations, we may be looking at a much larger legal situation than family fraud. As the implications began to sink in, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Amanda, this one including a photo of my granddaughters posing in front of an airport welcome sign in Paris, their expressions strained despite their attempted smiles. Looking at their faces, these girls I had read bedtime stories to, taught to bake cookies, comforted through first heartbreaks. I felt a renewed determination cutting through my shock and hurt. I need time to think about how to proceed, I said finally. But in the meantime, I want to know everything. No matter how bad it is. Maxwell nodded gravely. We'll keep digging. And Margaret? He waited until I met his eyes. Robert would be proud of your courage today. As I left his office an hour later, the weight of betrayal still crushing my chest, I realized I had 3 weeks, the duration of their family vacation, to decide exactly how to confront the people who had so callously discarded me. 3 weeks to prepare for a homecoming they would never expect. The next morning, I awoke to a video call from Paris. Amanda's face filled my screen, the Eiffel Tower strategically positioned in the background, her expression a carefully constructed mask of concern. "Mom, how are you holding up?" Her voice carried just the right note of sympathy. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I might have believed she was genuinely distressed about my absence. "I'm managing," I replied, keeping my tone neutral, as Maxwell had advised. "Act disappointed, but not suspicious. Let them think their plan is working." "We've been on the phone with the airline for hours," Amanda continued, the lie flowing effortlessly. "They're being absolutely impossible about issuing a replacement ticket. Something about security protocols and verification periods." In the background, I could see my granddaughters at a cafe table, Derek leaning in to say something to Sophia. The casual luxury of the scene, the beautiful Parisian cafe, their designer outfits, the champagne glasses on the table, all paid for, in part, with my retirement savings. "That sounds frustrating," I managed, swallowing the bitter taste of betrayal. "The hotels are being difficult too," Derek chimed in, moving beside Amanda. "Since the bookings were package deals, they're claiming they can't add a person without disrupting all the arrangements. Absolute nightmare." I noticed Olivia watching her parents from the background, a slight frown creasing her forehead. Always the more perceptive of the two, my younger granddaughter had a way of seeing through pretenses that sometimes made her parents uncomfortable. "Well, you all enjoy yourselves," I said. "Don't let my situation spoil your trip." "We feel terrible, Mom," Amanda insisted, though I noted she'd angled the camera to better capture the Parisian backdrop rather than focus on her face. "We'll keep trying to find a solution. Maybe you can join us for the Italy portion next week." "Perhaps," I said, knowing it would never happen. "I should go now. I have some errands to run." After ending the call, I sat in silence for several minutes, processing the elaborate performance I'd just witnessed. The casual cruelty of it was still stunning. Not just taking my money, but continuing the charade, spinning tales of imaginary efforts on my behalf. My phone pinged with a text from Maxwell. "Meeting at 11 a.m. We have developments." At his office, I found not just Maxwell and Jen waiting for me, but also a distinguished older man I didn't recognize. "Margaret, this is Howard Brennan," Maxwell introduced us. "Former FBI, now our top investigator. He specializes in complex financial fraud cases." Howard shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Foster, I've been reviewing your case. I'm sorry about what your family has put you through." "And what have you found?" I asked, skipping the pleasantries. Jen opened her laptop. "We've been analyzing the financial records from the tablet, cross-referencing with public records and databases. The picture isn't pretty. Over the next hour, they laid out a stunning web of financial deception extending far beyond what I had initially discovered. Derek's real estate business, supposedly thriving, was actually drowning in debt. Multiple properties were underwater, with mortgages far exceeding their values. Tax liens, defaulted loans, and judgments against the company had been hidden through a series of shell corporations. They've been robbing Peter to pay Paul for years, Howard explained, using new investor money to pay off previous investors, essentially a Ponzi scheme, but disguised within legitimate-looking real estate ventures. And the family contributions? I asked. Those appear to be emergency infusions when other sources dried up, Jen said. Based on the timing, they reached out to family members when they were most desperate for cash. Maxwell leaned forward, his expression grave. Margaret, the connection to Vincent Calabresi is particularly concerning. Our investigation suggests Derek may be laundering money through his failing developments. Laundering money? For Calabresi? The implications were staggering. This went far beyond family fraud. Howard nodded solemnly. The evidence is circumstantial but compelling. Large cash deposits into Derek's business accounts, followed by transfers to offshore entities, then returning as investor funds in Calabresi's legitimate businesses. Classic laundering patterns. What does this mean for Amanda? For my granddaughters? My head was spinning with the magnitude of what they were describing. It depends on Amanda's level of involvement, Maxwell said carefully. The tablet contains evidence she knew about the family fraud scheme. She was clearly a willing participant there. Whether she understood the full scope of Derek's activities with Calabresi is less clear. I thought about the Amanda I'd raised, bright, sometimes selfish, but never someone I would have imagined capable of criminal conspiracy. Had I missed something fundamental about my own daughter? Or had Derek pulled her into a world she hadn't initially understood until she was too compromised to escape? We have another development, Jen added, turning her laptop toward me. We found correspondence indicating they've targeted your sister Ellen as their next mark. They're planning to approach her about investing in a property when they return from Europe. Ellen, my widowed sister, who had recently sold her home to move to a retirement community. The thought of them going after her modest savings made my blood boil. That's not happening, I said firmly. No, it's not, Maxwell agreed, but it helps establish ongoing criminal intent, which strengthens our position. What is our position exactly? I asked. What are we doing here, Max? He exchanged glances with Howard before answering. That depends on what you want, Margaret. We have enough evidence to pursue criminal charges, civil litigation, or a private settlement. Each path has different implications. I want justice, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. But I don't want my granddaughters to suffer any more than necessary. They're innocent in all this. There may be a way to thread that needle, Howard suggested, but it would require careful timing and leverage. I'm listening. We continue gathering evidence while they're in Europe, he explained. We contact the other victims discreetly, document their cases, and build a comprehensive file. When Amanda and Derek return, we're waiting with irrefutable evidence and clear demands. What kind of demands? I asked. Full financial restitution to all victims, a legally binding agreement preventing them from accessing or controlling assets belonging to any family member. And, he hesitated briefly, cooperation with authorities regarding the Calabresi connection. That last part is non-negotiable, Maxwell interjected. If Derek is involved in money laundering for Calabresi, that's a federal offense with serious implications. Your son-in-law may be facing criminal charges, regardless of how we handle the family fraud aspect. I closed my eyes briefly, imagining the fallout. My granddaughters watching their father arrested. Amanda possibly implicated as well. Our family name in the newspapers, the subject of gossip and speculation. The girls facing their peers after everyone knew what their parents had done. Yet the alternative, allowing Amanda and Derek to continue victimizing vulnerable family members, potentially enabling criminal enterprises through Derek's business dealings, was unthinkable. I need to protect my granddaughters, I said finally. Whatever approach we take has to minimize the impact on them. We can build that into our strategy, Maxwell assured me. But Margaret, you need to be prepared. There's no path forward where Sophia and Olivia remain completely unaffected. The best we can do is mitigate the damage and be there to support them through it. As I left the meeting with a head full of legal strategies and a heart heavy with the implications for my family, my phone buzzed with another text from Amanda. Just had the most amazing dinner at the restaurant you always talked about visiting. Wish you were here. Still working on the ticket situation. Attached was a photo of the family toasting with expensive wine glasses, the girls dressed in new outfits I'd never seen before. I stared at the image for a long moment before typing my reply. Looks wonderful. Enjoy every moment. I'm keeping busy here. If they only knew how busy, I thought grimly, slipping my phone back into my purse. The 3-week European vacation they'd so carefully planned without me was giving me exactly the time I needed to prepare for their return, and I intended to use every minute of it. A week into Amanda and Derek's European vacation, I settled into a strange new routine. Each morning brought cheery video calls from various picturesque locations, Provence, Monaco, the Italian Riviera, with increasingly elaborate excuses about why joining them was proving unfortunately impossible. Each afternoon found me at Maxwell's office, diving deeper into the tangled web of deception my daughter and son-in-law had created. We've made contact with Patricia, Maxwell informed me during our daily briefing. Robert's sister Patricia had apparently contributed $42,000 toward a family investment opportunity the previous year, only to be told months later that the investment had unfortunately failed. How did she take it? I asked, imagining my practical, no-nonsense sister-in-law processing such a betrayal. Initially with disbelief, then anger, Maxwell replied. She's provided us with all her documentation and agreed to join our consolidated approach. That makes 4 family members confirmed as victims, with 2 more we're still investigating. 4 confirmed victims, I echoed hollowly. My own daughter. Howard Brennan entered the conference room, his expression serious but with a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. We've got something significant on the Calabresi connection. He laid several photographs on the table, surveillance images showing Derek meeting with Vincent Calabresi at a restaurant, exchanging what appeared to be documents. The timestamp showed it was just 3 days before they'd left for Europe. These came from an ongoing investigation, Howard explained. I still have contacts at the bureau who were willing to share when I explained the situation. They've had Calabresi under surveillance for months. Does this mean the FBI is already investigating Derek? I asked, studying the images. Not directly, Howard clarified. He's a peripheral figure in their Calabresi investigation at this point. But that could change quickly with the right information. Maxwell leaned forward, tapping the photographs. This gives us additional leverage, Margaret. Derek isn't just committing fraud against family members. He's potentially entangled with a major criminal enterprise. The consequences of that are considerably more severe than what he and Amanda have done to you and the others. What are you suggesting? That we approach the FBI with what we've found, Howard said. If Derek is laundering money for Calabresi, federal authorities will want that information. They might be willing to offer him some consideration in exchange for testimony against Calabresi. And that could potentially reduce any penalties Derek faces, Maxwell added, which would benefit your granddaughters. I considered this carefully. The thought of Derek cooperating with authorities against someone like Calabresi carried its own dangers. Robert had been concerned enough about Calabresi to temporarily relocate our family during his investigation years ago. Would Derek be at risk if he cooperated against Calabresi? I asked. Howard didn't sugarcoat his response. Yes, witness protection would likely be necessary, but the alternative, federal charges for money laundering with no cooperation benefit, would mean years in prison. The implications were staggering. Witness protection would mean my granddaughters potentially losing their identities, their home, their friends, everything familiar. Yet the alternative could mean growing up with their father in prison. What about Amanda? I asked. Where does she fit in all this? Maxwell and Howard exchanged glances before Jen answered from her position at the computer. Based on the communications we've recovered, Amanda appears aware of Derek's business dealings but not directly involved in the Calabresi connection, she explained. She knows he's engaged in financial improprieties, but the evidence suggests she's compartmentalized that knowledge. She's fully complicit in the family fraud scheme, however. My phone chimed with a text. Olivia sending a photo of herself in Venice, looking strangely subdued despite the beautiful backdrop. Miss you, Grandma, the message read. Wish you were here. Something in her expression made me pause. Unlike the performative group photos Amanda kept sending, this private message from my granddaughter seemed genuinely wistful. Was Olivia beginning to see through her parents' charade? I need to consider all angles here, I said finally. This isn't just about justice or restitution anymore. We're talking about potentially upending my granddaughter's entire lives. Take the time you need, Maxwell advised. But remember, events may force our hand. If the FBI investigation into Calabrese accelerates, Derek could be caught in that net regardless of our actions. That evening, alone in my too-quiet house, I found myself opening the family photo albums I kept meticulously organized on bookshelves in the living room. Images of Amanda as a child, her gap-toothed smile and innocent eyes staring back at me from decades past. Robert holding her on his shoulders at the state fair. Amanda's high school graduation, her college years, her wedding to Derek. When had things changed? Had there always been this capacity for deception in my daughter, or had it developed gradually under Derek's influence? The financial pressures of maintaining appearances? The slow erosion of ethical boundaries? My phone rang, interrupting this painful retrospection. Sophia's name flashed on the screen. My older granddaughter rarely called me directly. Grandma? Her voice sounded strange, tight with an emotion I couldn't immediately identify. Sophia? Is everything all right, sweetheart? Yeah, I guess. A pause. We're in Italy now. Florence. It's really pretty. I've seen the photos. It looks beautiful. Another hesitation. Grandma, can I ask you something weird? Of course, honey. Anything. Did you decide not to come on this trip? Like, was it your choice? The question caught me completely off guard. Why would you ask that? I don't know. Something feels off. Mom and Dad keep talking about how they're trying to fix your ticket situation, but always when they think we can't hear. And yesterday, I overheard Dad tell Mom that they don't need to worry about it anymore, and they should just enjoy what they've earned. My heart pounded as I carefully considered my response. I hadn't anticipated this complication. My granddaughter developing suspicions while still in Europe with her parents. That does sound strange, I acknowledged, not wanting to lie to her, but also aware that this wasn't a conversation to have over an international phone call. Why don't we talk more about it when you get back? So something is wrong, she pressed, always quick to pick up nuances. I knew it. Olivia thinks so too. Sophia, this isn't a good time to get into this. You should be enjoying your trip. How can I enjoy it knowing something's not right? Grandma, did they do something? She lowered her voice to a whisper. Did they take your money? The direct question, so accurately hitting the mark, left me momentarily speechless. Had the girls noticed more than Amanda and Derek realized? Sophia, I need you to trust me, I said finally. We'll sort everything out when you get home. For now, please just focus on experiencing Europe. Take lots of pictures, learn everything you can, make memories with your sister. But please, sweetheart, for me, we'll talk, really talk, when you're back. After ending the call, I immediately phoned Maxwell. The girls are getting suspicious, I explained after relaying the conversation. I'm concerned about what might happen if they confront Amanda and Derek while still in Europe. This complicates things, he agreed. If Amanda and Derek feel cornered, they might take defensive actions that would make our strategy more difficult to execute. We need them to return as planned, unaware of what's waiting. Should I be doing something differently? Sophia called me directly. That suggests she's really troubled by what she's sensing. Reassure the girls without revealing anything, Maxwell advised. The most important thing is to get everyone back here where we can control the situation and ensure your granddaughters have proper support when everything comes to light. That night, I sent both Sophia and Olivia individual messages with cheerful questions about their experiences and gentle reminders to enjoy the unique opportunity they had to explore Europe. To Sophia, I added, I promise we'll sort everything out when you're home. For now, just be a teenager seeing the world. I love you both more than anything. As I prepared for bed, my phone lit up with another message. Amanda sending the day's update with exaggerated descriptions of continued efforts to resolve my ticket situation, followed by effusive details about their Tuscan wine tour. The calculated performance, knowing what I now knew, turned my stomach. 2 more weeks, I reminded myself. 2 more weeks of this charade before they returned, confident in their successful deception, to face the consequences they never anticipated. Maxwell's team continued building their case, gathering statements from other family victims, documenting the money trail, establishing timelines and patterns. Howard maintained contact with his FBI connections, carefully positioning our information without yet making formal disclosures. And I, the useless old woman they'd so casually discarded at the airport, prepared for a confrontation that would permanently alter the fabric of our family. "Margaret, we need to talk about something concerning," Maxwell said as I entered his office 2 days later. The gravity in his expression immediately set me on edge. Howard and Jen were already seated at the conference table, along with a man I hadn't met before, tall and lean, with a no-nonsense demeanor that practically screamed law enforcement. "This is Special Agent Thomas Reed," Maxwell introduced us. "He's with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." I shook his hand, apprehension growing. "Has something happened?" "Mrs. Foster," Agent Reed began, "I appreciate your willingness to meet on such short notice. I understand this is a difficult situation involving your family. Howard has briefed me on certain aspects of your case," he continued, "but recent developments have accelerated our timeline. Vincent Calabrese appears to be liquidating assets and transferring funds offshore at an unusual rate." "What does that mean for Derek?" I asked. "It means Calabrese may be preparing to disappear," Howard explained. "And if he does, he could take evidence of Derek's involvement with him," Maxwell finished. "Or worse, tie up loose ends before he goes." The implication hung heavily in the air. I remembered Robert's grim warnings about Calabrese's methods years ago. "You think Derek could be in danger?" I asked, my throat suddenly dry. Agent Reed's expression remained carefully neutral. "We consider it a possibility worth addressing. If your son-in-law has been laundering money for Calabrese and the operation is shutting down, he represents a potential liability." "Have you been monitoring their communications while they're in Europe?" I asked. Jen nodded. "Derek received several calls from blocked numbers in the past 48 hours. Based on the timing of his subsequent calls to financial institutions, we believe he's being pressured to facilitate some final transactions." Can you tell what kind of transactions?" "Not specifically," Jen admitted, "but he's been attempting to access equity lines of credit remotely and has made multiple calls to his office manager with urgent instructions." "Mrs. Foster," Agent Reed interjected, "I need to be direct. We believe your son-in-law may be operating under duress. This changes our approach significantly." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "We need to make contact with Derek directly," he replied. "Warn him of the potential threat and offer protection in exchange for cooperation." "While he's still in Europe? With my granddaughters there?" The thought of federal agents approaching Derek while my granddaughters were present sent a wave of panic through me. "We would handle it discreetly," Agent Reed assured me. "The priority would be ensuring your family's safety while securing Derek's cooperation." I sat back, attempting to process this unexpected development. What had begun as a painful family betrayal was rapidly evolving into something far more dangerous. "If Calabrese is indeed preparing to disappear, we have a narrow window," Howard added gently. "The FBI needs to move quickly." "And you need my approval because?" I asked, already guessing the answer. "Because we came to this information through your case," Maxwell explained. "And because how we handle this will significantly impact your daughter and granddaughters." I took a deep breath, considering the impossible position before me. Derek had stolen from me, from our family. He had manipulated and betrayed us repeatedly. Yet he was still my granddaughter's father, still Amanda's husband, and now, potentially, in danger from forces far more sinister than legal consequences. "If you approach Derek now, what happens to our original plan?" I asked. "The confrontation when they return, the restitution to family members? It complicates things," Maxwell acknowledged. "But Derek facing potential threats from Calabrese changes the equation. Physical safety takes precedence over financial restitution." Agent Reed leaned forward. "Mrs. Foster, if your son-in-law provides valuable testimony against Calabrese, that cooperation would likely be considered during any proceedings related to his other legal issues." Translation: Derek might get leniency on the family fraud in exchange for helping take down Calabrese. The notion left me with mixed feelings. Justice for our family somewhat compromised to serve the larger goal of prosecuting a dangerous criminal. "What about Amanda? The girls?" I pressed. "Their safety would be our priority," Agent Reed assured me. "Depending on Derek's level of cooperation and the threat assessment, protective measures would be implemented, which could mean witness protection," I stated flatly. "That's one possibility," he conceded, "though there are various levels of protection that might be appropriate." The room fell silent as I weighed the implications, My granddaughters potentially uprooted from their lives, given new identities. Amanda forced to reckon not just with her own misdeeds, but with the far more serious criminal entanglements of her husband. I need to know they'll be safe, I said finally. Not just physically, but emotionally. This will devastate them. We can arrange for specialized support services, Agent Reed offered. The FBI has extensive experience handling situations involving minors affected by witness protection scenarios. And the family fraud aspect? I turned to Maxwell. What happens to that? It remains a separate legal matter, he replied. But practically speaking, if Derek cooperates against Calabrese, it would create natural leverage for resolving the family situation more favorably for your granddaughters. Meaning Derek might avoid additional charges for what they did to me and the others, I clarified. Possibly, Maxwell admitted, though full restitution would still be required. I stood and walked to the window, gazing at the city below as I processed the impossible choice before me. The pain of betrayal still burned fresh, the desire for accountability still strong. Yet the thought of my granddaughters caught in the crosshairs of a dangerous criminal organization overshadowed everything else. Do it, I said finally, turning back to face them. Contact Derek, but I want certain conditions. What conditions? Agent Reed asked. First, the approach happens away from my granddaughters. I don't want them present for that conversation. He nodded. We can arrange that. Second, Amanda needs to understand her own legal jeopardy separately from Derek's situation. I won't have her thinking she's absolved of responsibility for what they did to me and the others. That's reasonable, Maxwell agreed. And third, I continued, my voice strengthening, I want to be present when they return. Whatever protective arrangements are made, whatever deals are struck, I want to look my daughter in the eye when she realizes what they've done and what it's cost. Agent Reed glanced at Maxwell before responding. That might be complicated depending on how the situation develops, but we'll do our best to accommodate your request. The meeting continued for another hour as they outlined the protocol for contacting Derek overseas and the potential scenarios that might follow. Words like extraction, protective custody, and secure location peppered the conversation, each one driving home the severity of what was unfolding. As I left Maxwell's office that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Day trip to Cinque Terre. The colors are incredible. Still working on your ticket situation. So frustrating. The accompanying photo showed my granddaughters on a colorful terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, their smiles not quite reaching their eyes. In the background, Derek was visible speaking intently into his phone, his posture tense despite the idyllic setting. Was he already receiving pressure from Calabrese's organization? Were my granddaughters already in danger simply by being in his presence? I typed a careful response. Beautiful. Enjoy every moment. Don't worry about me. Just focus on making memories with the girls. As I sent the message, I wondered if this would be one of the last normal exchanges before their world imploded. Within days, federal agents would approach Derek. Within weeks, their entire life might be dismantled, not just because of the family fraud I'd discovered, but because of much darker connections I'd never suspected. The betrayal that began with my $35,000 had unveiled something far more sinister than I could have imagined. And now, despite everything they'd done, I found myself worried for their safety, especially my granddaughters, innocent bystanders in their parents' web of deception. Contact has been made. Agent Reed's voice was clipped and professional as he delivered the news 3 days later. We sat in a secure conference room at the FBI field office rather than Maxwell's law firm, a change that underscored the escalating seriousness of the situation. How did Derek respond? I asked, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their slight trembling. Initially with denial, then concern, Reed replied. When presented with evidence of Calabrese's activities and the potential threat, he became more cooperative. Where were my granddaughters during this conversation? On a guided tour of the Uffizi Gallery with your daughter. Our agents approached Derek at his hotel while he was alone. I nodded, relieved at least that Sophia and Olivia had been spared witnessing that confrontation. And now? Mr. Foster has agreed to preliminary cooperation. He's provided access to certain financial records and communication logs that our analysts are currently reviewing. Reed consulted a tablet before continuing. Based on his initial disclosure, we believe Calabrese was using his development projects to launder approximately $12 million over the past 3 years. The figure staggered me. And Derek facilitated this? According to his statement, he initially believed he was simply receiving legitimate business investments. When he began to suspect the true nature of the funds, he was already compromised and, he claims, under implicit threat. Maxwell, who had accompanied me to this meeting, made a skeptical noise. Convenient narrative. He portrays himself as a victim rather than a willing participant. We're aware of the potential for self-serving statements, Reed acknowledged. But regardless of how he became involved, he does appear to have valuable information about Calabresi's operation. What happens next? I asked. We're implementing protective protocols for your family, Reed explained. Agents will remain close to them for the remainder of their European trip, though maintaining discreet surveillance. Do Amanda and the girls know what's happening? Reed exchanged glances with his colleague, a female agent who had been silently taking notes. Mr. Foster informed his wife last night after our meeting. According to our surveillance, the conversation was heated. I could imagine. Amanda discovering not only that her husband was involved with organized crime, but that federal agents were now involved, all while maintaining the charade that they were still trying to arrange my travel to join them. And my granddaughters? They've been told a modified version, that their father is helping with a business investigation and that the family needs to take certain precautions. The full situation has not been disclosed to them. I closed my eyes briefly, imagining the confusion and fear Sophia and Olivia must be feeling. The carefree European vacation had suddenly transformed into something entirely different. We've arranged for the family to return early, Reed continued. They'll be on a flight tomorrow, arriving the following morning. We felt it prudent to get them back on U.S. soil where we can better control security arrangements. They're coming home 2 weeks early? The timeline I'd been mentally preparing for suddenly compressed dramatically. Yes, given Calabresi's activities and Mr. Foster's cooperation, continuing the European trip presented unnecessary complications and risks. I turned to Maxwell. What does this mean for our original plan? The confrontation about the family fraud? It's still viable, but with modifications, he replied. The FBI's involvement adds complexity but doesn't negate the financial crimes committed against you and the others. We'll need to coordinate our approach. Mrs. Foster, Reed interjected, I understand your desire for accountability regarding the financial deception your daughter and son-in-law perpetrated. However, I must emphasize that the Calabresi investigation takes precedence from our perspective, meaning Derek might escape consequences for stealing from his family because he's useful in your bigger case, I stated flatly. Not escape consequences entirely, Reed clarified, but cooperation is typically considered during sentencing recommendations. That's simply the reality of how these cases work. The practical injustice of it burned, but I understood the calculation. Calabresi was indeed the greater threat, not just to my family, but to many others. What about Amanda? I asked. Her involvement appears limited to the family fraud, not the Calabresi connection. That's our current understanding, Reed confirmed. Ms. Foster will still face potential charges related to wire fraud and elder exploitation, though her husband's cooperation may influence how aggressively those charges are pursued. I want restitution, I said firmly. Not just for me, but for everyone they deceived. Patricia, William, Eleanor, all of them deserve to be made whole. That's reasonable and achievable, Maxwell assured me. Regardless of how the criminal aspects are handled, we can pursue civil remedies to recover the fraudulently obtained funds. When they arrive tomorrow, I said, turning back to Agent Reed, I want to be there. He frowned slightly. Mrs. Foster, the initial processing will involve debriefing and security protocols that... I'm not asking to be involved in your investigation, I interrupted, but I need to see my granddaughters. And I need Amanda to face me. Not just federal agents, but the mother she betrayed and abandoned at an airport. Reed considered this for a moment before nodding. We can arrange a controlled meeting after the initial processing is complete, but I must insist that certain topics remain off-limits until we've secured Mr. Foster's formal cooperation agreement. I understand the limitations, I assured him, but they need to know that I know that the carefully constructed lie they've been maintaining has unraveled completely. Later that day, I returned home to find a final postcard from Italy in my mailbox, mailed before the FBI intervention, its cheerful message now reading like communication from a different universe. Weather perfect, girls learning so much about Renaissance art, still working on your travel situation. I set it on my kitchen table, staring at Amanda's handwriting, the daughter I'd taught to form those very letters decades ago. How had we arrived at this point? A lifetime of love and sacrifice, culminating in betrayal, federal investigations, and potential witness protection. My phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. A secure line established by Agent Reed. Family boarding flight in 3 hours. Arrival confirmed for tomorrow, 10:15 a.m. Meeting arranged for 2 p.m. at secure location. Car will collect you at 1:30. It was happening. After weeks of building evidence and strategy, I would finally confront my daughter and son-in-law about their betrayal, but under circumstances far more dramatic than I'd ever anticipated. I spent that evening in strange, methodical preparation. I selected my outfit carefully, not for vanity, but for strength, choosing clothes that made me feel confident and dignified. I reviewed key documents Maxwell had provided, refreshing my understanding of exactly what Amanda and Derek had done, ensuring I couldn't be manipulated or gaslighted during our confrontation. And I wrote letters to each of my granddaughters, heartfelt messages explaining that whatever happened with their parents, my love for them remained unchanged, that I would be their constant in the chaos that was about to engulf their lives. As I prepared for bed, my phone chimed once more. A text from Sophia, sent despite the supervised circumstances I knew they were under. Coming home early. Something's wrong with Dad. Mom won't stop crying. I'm scared, Grandma. I stared at the message, weighing my response carefully. How much could I say? How much should I reveal? I know, sweetheart, I finally replied. It's complicated, but you're not alone. I'll see you tomorrow. Whatever happens, I'm here for you and Olivia. Always. Sleep eluded me that night as I imagined my family somewhere over the Atlantic, my granddaughters confused and frightened, Amanda finally facing the consequences of her actions, Derek potentially heading toward a cooperation agreement that would irrevocably alter all their lives. Tomorrow would bring a confrontation I had both dreaded and needed, the moment when pretense would finally give way to truth, when my daughter would have to look me in the eye and acknowledge what she had done. Not just to me, but to our entire family. Not just the $35,000 she had taken under false pretenses, but the trust she had shattered, the example she had set for her daughters, the legal jeopardy she had created for herself through years of calculated deception. Tomorrow, they would face the mother they had dismissed as a useless old woman and left behind without a second thought. The mother who had uncovered everything, who had set in motion the unraveling of their elaborately constructed life. The mother who, despite everything, still lay awake worrying about them all. The secure location turned out to be a nondescript government building on the outskirts of the city. Agent Reed met me in the lobby, his expression carefully neutral as he escorted me through security checkpoints. Your family arrived safely this morning, he informed me as we rode the elevator to the 4th floor. They've been in debriefing sessions since then. Mr. Foster is currently with our financial crimes team, while Mrs. Foster and your granddaughters are in a separate waiting area. How are the girls? I asked, my primary concern always returning to Sophia and Olivia. Understandably confused and upset, we've provided a counselor who specializes in adolescent trauma to speak with them. He hesitated before adding, they've asked for you several times. The elevator doors opened to a corridor of identical doors with small windows. Reed led me to a conference room where Maxwell waited, accompanied by a woman I hadn't met before. Margaret, this is Dr. Elaine Morgan, Maxwell introduced us. She's a forensic psychologist who works with the FBI on sensitive family cases. I'll be present during your meeting with your daughter and granddaughters, Dr. Hindi, Morgan explained, her manner calm but authoritative. My role is primarily to support the girls and monitor their emotional responses during what will likely be a difficult conversation. Before we proceed, Agent Reed said, I need to review the parameters of this meeting. He outlined the restrictions clearly. No discussion of Derek's cooperation details, no specifics about the Calabrese investigation, and the conversation should focus primarily on the family fraud aspect, rather than potential consequences. Is Amanda aware that I've discovered what they did? I asked. Yes, Reed confirmed. She was informed during this morning's interview that their financial deception had been uncovered. She knows you're here and have been working with legal counsel. And the girls? They know something serious has happened involving their parents, but not the specific nature of either the fraud against family members or their father's business connections. That's a conversation that needs to happen with appropriate support. I nodded, steeling myself for what was to come. I'm ready. Reed led us to a larger conference room down the hall. Through the window, I caught my first glimpse of Amanda in nearly a month. My daughter sat rigidly at the table, her normally perfect appearance disheveled from international travel and emotional strain. Beside her, Sophia and Olivia huddled together, looking younger and more vulnerable than their teenage years. When the door opened, all three heads turned toward me. Olivia immediately stood, her face crumpling with relief. "Grandma!" she cried, rushing toward me before anyone could stop her. I opened my arms instinctively, holding her trembling body close as she buried her face against my shoulder. "It's okay," I murmured, stroking her hair. "I'm here now." Sophia approached more cautiously, her expression a complicated mixture of relief and wariness. At 17, she was old enough to sense that whatever was happening involved layers of adult deception. Still, when I extended one arm toward her, she stepped into the embrace, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. Only Amanda remained seated, her face a mask of tension as she watched our reunion. The daughter I had raised, who had once run to my arms with the same unquestioning trust her daughters now showed, couldn't meet my eyes. "Girls," Dr. Morgan said gently after a moment, "why don't you sit with your grandmother while we talk?" We arranged ourselves on one side of the conference table, me in the middle with a granddaughter on each side, while Amanda sat across from us, flanked by Agent Reed and Dr. Morgan. Maxwell positioned himself slightly apart, the legal observer to this family reckoning. "Mom," Amanda finally spoke, her voice hoarse, "I don't even know where to start." "The airport seems appropriate," I replied, keeping my tone measured despite the emotions churning beneath the surface. "When you told me you'd forgotten my ticket and left me behind," Olivia looked up sharply. "What?" "Mom said there was a mix-up with the reservations." "There was no mix-up, Olivia," I said gently, meeting my granddaughter's confused gaze. "There was never a ticket for me at all." "I don't understand," Sophia interjected, looking between her mother and me. "Grandma paid for her part of the trip. We all talked about it for months." "Your grandmother did pay," Agent Reed confirmed. "She contributed $35,000 toward the family vacation, but your parents never intended for her to actually join you." Amanda's face flushed with shame as her carefully constructed narrative collapsed under official confirmation. "You knew?" Sophia asked me, her voice barely audible. "You knew they left you behind on purpose?" "Not at first," I admitted, "but I discovered the truth soon after you left." "How?" Amanda asked, speaking directly to me for the first time. "You left your tablet at my house," I explained, watching recognition dawn in her eyes. "The tablet with all your emails and messages planning exactly how to take my money while making sure I couldn't actually come along." Olivia made a small, wounded sound beside me. "That can't be true. Mom wouldn't do that. Dad wouldn't." But Amanda's expression had already confirmed everything. She closed her eyes briefly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. "We were in financial trouble. The business was failing. We needed—" "Don't," I interrupted sharply. "Don't pretend this was some desperate one-time mistake. The tablet contained records of every family member you've done this to. Patricia, William, Eleanor. A systematic pattern of taking advantage of people who trusted you." Sophia abruptly stood, backing away from the table. "You stole from our family? From Great-Aunt Patricia? From Grandma?" "Sophia, please." Amanda reached toward her daughter, who flinched away. "Did Dad know?" Olivia asked, her voice small and broken. "Was it both of you?" "It was both of them," I confirmed gently. "The emails and messages showed they planned it together." "That's why we've been talking to the FBI?" Sophia demanded, looking at Agent Reed. "Because they committed fraud?" A tense silence fell as the adults in the room exchanged glances. How much to reveal to these girls who had already absorbed so much devastating information? "Your parents' financial activities have raised several legal concerns," Dr. Morgan finally answered, her professional training evident in her careful phrasing. "Some related to family matters, others to your father's business practices." "Is Dad going to prison?" Olivia asked bluntly, tears streaming down her face. "There are many factors that will determine the outcomes of this situation," Agent Reed replied. Your father is currently cooperating with our investigation, which will be considered in any proceedings. And Mom? Sophia looked directly at me rather than the FBI agent, seeking truth from the grandmother who had never lied to her. I met her gaze steadily. Your mother made serious mistakes, Sophia. There will be consequences. But everyone in this room wants to ensure that those consequences impact you and your sister as little as possible. How can you say that? Amanda burst out, her composure finally breaking. How can you sit there talking about consequences like you care about protecting them? You're the one who set all this in motion. You could have confronted me privately instead of involving federal agents and lawyers. The FBI involvement has nothing to do with me, I replied calmly. That resulted from Derek's business connections, which I knew nothing about until after I discovered your fraud. You expect me to believe that? That this massive overreaction to a family financial dispute just happened to uncover some alleged connection to organized crime? Her voice dripped with skepticism. Mrs. Foster, Agent Reed interjected firmly, I can confirm that the investigation into Vincent Calabrese and his organization predates your mother's discovery by several years. Your husband's involvement emerged through separate channels that converged with your mother's evidence. The official confirmation seemed to deflate Amanda's brief surge of defiance. She slumped in her chair, the full weight of their situation visibly settling on her shoulders. What happens now? Sophia asked, her voice steadier than I expected from a 17-year-old facing her family's implosion. To all of us? That depends on several factors, Dr. Morgan explained. Your parents' level of cooperation, the legal processes that follow, and the arrangements made to ensure your safety and well-being. Safety? Olivia repeated, fear edging her voice. Are we in danger? Another loaded glance between the adults. How much to reveal about Calabrese and the potential threats that had accelerated their return from Europe? There are some security concerns being addressed, Agent Reed said carefully, which is why you'll be staying in a protected location for the immediate future. Like witness protection? Sophia asked, her quick mind connecting dots despite the adults' careful phrasing. New names? New schools? All that? We're not at that stage yet, Reed assured her. The current arrangements are temporary while we assess the situation. Where will we go? Olivia looked between her mother and me, seeking anchors in the storm engulfing her young life. Before Amanda could speak, I leaned forward, meeting my granddaughter's anxious gazes. You have options, girls. Whatever happens with your parents' legal situations, you won't be alone. I'm here. I've always been here. The simple declaration hung in the air, a contrast to the complex web of lies, theft, and betrayal that had led us to this sterile conference room. In that moment, despite everything Amanda and Derek had done, my primary concern remained the two innocent teenagers caught in the crossfire of adult deception. Mom? Amanda said quietly, her voice stripped of defensiveness. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. We should never have. Save your apologies for your daughters, I interrupted, not yet ready to address her contrition. They're the ones whose trust you've betrayed most deeply today. As if on cue, the door opened and another agent appeared, speaking quietly to Reed before departing. Mr. Foster's interview has concluded for today, Reed announced. Dr. Morgan will escort you all to the family waiting area where you can speak with him briefly before arrangements are made for secure transportation. As everyone prepared to move, I exchanged a meaningful glance with Maxwell. Phase 1 of our confrontation was complete. Amanda knew that I had uncovered everything, that the elaborate deception had failed completely. The girls now understood at least part of what their parents had done. What remained unclear was where we would all go from here, legally, emotionally, and literally, given the security concerns surrounding Derek's cooperation against Calabrese. The only certainty was that nothing would ever be the same for any of us again. The following days unfolded in a blur of legal meetings, emotional conversations, and practical arrangements that left little time for processing the seismic shifts occurring in our family's foundation. Derek's cooperation with federal authorities had immediate repercussions. Within 48 hours of their return, FBI agents conducted coordinated raids on several of Calabrese's properties, seizing documents and digital records that, according to Maxwell's sources, provided significant evidence of money laundering, tax evasion, and fraud. Amanda, facing her own legal jeopardy, engaged separate counsel, a stern, practical woman named Vanessa Zhao who specialized in white-collar crime. The initial meetings between her team and Maxwell established the framework for addressing the family fraud: full financial restitution to all victims, formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and a structured settlement that would avoid criminal charges while still imposing meaningful consequences. "She's getting off too lightly," Patricia had said bluntly during our conference call with the other family victims. "They stole from all of us, manipulated us, and now she faces what? Writing checks and saying sorry? The alternative is pressing criminal charges," Maxwell had explained, "which would likely result in incarceration." Given the situation with the girls, the unspoken reality hung in the air. Sophia and Olivia had already lost functional access to their father, who remained in federal custody as his cooperation agreement was formalized. Adding their mother to the criminal justice system would leave them effectively orphaned during their most vulnerable years. For their sake, we all ultimately agreed to the civil resolution: full financial restitution with significant interest, legally binding restrictions on Amanda's access to family members' finances, mandatory therapy, and community service. The most immediate challenge was the girls' living situation. With Derek in federal custody and the family home potentially subject to asset forfeiture related to the money laundering investigation, they needed stable housing and support. "I want them to stay with me," I told the social worker assigned to the case, my resolve absolute. "I'm their grandmother. I'm stable, financially secure, and my home has plenty of space. Mrs. Foster, I appreciate your willingness," she had replied carefully. "But there are considerations regarding proximity to their current school, their mother's visitation rights, and potential security concerns related to their father's cooperation." Security concerns. The euphemism for the fact that Calabrese might target Derek's family in retaliation for his cooperation. The threat assessment had deemed the risk moderate, but not immediate, whatever that bureaucratic phrasing actually meant for our safety. "Their well-being is my only priority," I insisted. "I can relocate if necessary. I can accommodate whatever security protocols are required. But those girls need stability and unconditional love right now. Exactly what I can provide." 5 days after their return, I sat in a family court judge's chambers as she reviewed the temporary guardianship proposal. Amanda, looking pale and drawn in clothes that already seemed to hang more loosely on her frame, sat across from me, her attorney beside her. "Ms. Foster," the judge addressed Amanda, "you're not contesting this temporary guardianship arrangement?" "No, Your Honor," Amanda replied quietly. "My daughters have experienced significant trauma due to my actions and their father's situation. My mother can provide stability while I—" She paused, swallowing visibly, "while I address my legal issues and participate in the mandated therapeutic program." The judge nodded, reviewing the documents before her. "This is a 6-month arrangement with provisions for reassessment at that time. Mrs. Foster will have temporary guardianship, with Ms. Foster retaining specified visitation rights under appropriate supervision." Her eyes lifted, sharp and assessing as she looked between us. "I want to be clear. This court's primary concern is the well-being of these minor children. Any indication that adult conflicts are affecting them negatively will result in immediate review and potential modification of these arrangements." "I understand, Your Honor," I said. "As do I," Amanda added. After signing the necessary documents, we exited the chambers in uncomfortable silence. In the corridor, Amanda finally spoke directly to me. "They're staying with you tonight?" "Yes," I confirmed. "The security team has already cleared my house and installed additional measures. The girls are packing essential items with the social worker now." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "I never thought we'd end up here. Any of this." "Neither did I replied honestly. "Do you hate me?" she asked suddenly, vulnerability breaking through her carefully maintained composure. After everything we did, I considered the question seriously, examining the complicated emotions coursing through me. Anger, certainly. Disappointment, profoundly. But hate? No, I said finally. "I don't hate you, Amanda. I don't understand you. I don't recognize the person who could systematically deceive family members for financial gain. But you're still my daughter, and those girls are still your children. We'll find a way forward for their sake." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your understanding." "This isn't about what you deserve," I replied frankly. It's about what Sophia and Olivia need. They need their grandmother and their mother to find some way to coexist without additional trauma. So that's what we'll do. Later that afternoon, I welcomed my granddaughters into my home under circumstances none of us could have imagined a month earlier. FBI agents conducted a final security sweep before departing, leaving us with emergency contact protocols and a surveillance team discreetly positioned nearby. "This is weird," Sophia declared, setting her suitcase in the guest room that would now be hers. "Living with Grandma while Mom stays in a hotel and Dad's, wherever Dad is, in protective custody," Olivia supplied, her expression far too serious for a 15-year-old, "because he's testifying against bad people." The simplified explanation seemed to provide some framework for the girls to process their father's absence, though I knew they were aware there was much more to the situation than they'd been told. "I know this isn't what any of us expected," I acknowledged, sitting on the edge of the bed, "and I can't promise it won't be difficult, but we'll figure it out together, one day at a time." "Did you know?" Sophia asked abruptly. "When we left for Europe? Did you already know what Mom and Dad were doing?" I shook my head. "Not initially. I believed the story about the forgotten ticket. It was only after you'd left that I discovered the truth. Through Mom's tablet," Olivia recalled from our controlled meeting days earlier. "That's how you found out they took your money." "Yes," I confirmed. "And then I contacted Maxwell, Mr. Sullivan, who helped me understand what had happened and what my options were. And then the FBI got involved because of Dad's business stuff," Sophia added, piecing together the narrative from the fragments of information they'd been given. "That's right," I said, careful not to elaborate beyond what had been deemed appropriate for them to know at this stage. "Are Mom and Dad going to jail?" Olivia asked, the question that clearly weighed most heavily on both girls. "Your mother has reached an agreement that doesn't include jail time," I explained gently. "She'll have certain obligations to fulfill, but she'll remain free and able to see you regularly." "And Dad?" Sophia pressed. "Your father's situation is more complicated because of his business connections," I said, choosing my words carefully. "His cooperation with the authorities will likely influence the outcome of his case, but it's too soon to know exactly what that will mean." The girls exchanged glances, communicating in that wordless way siblings sometimes can. After a moment, Olivia spoke again, her voice small but determined. "You won't leave us, will you, Grandma? No matter what happens with Mom and Dad?" The question pierced straight to my heart, the fundamental fear beneath all the legal complexities and security concerns. These children, suddenly finding the adults in their lives unreliable or absent, seeking assurance that at least one person would remain constant. "Never," I promised, opening my arms as both girls moved into my embrace. "I'm here for as long as you need me. Always have been, always will be." That night, after the girls had finally fallen asleep, Olivia in the guest room, Sophia on the pull-out couch we'd hastily arranged in my home office, I sat alone in my kitchen, contemplating the extraordinary turn of events that had transformed my life. A month ago, I had stood abandoned at an airport, a useless old woman, discarded by her daughter and son-in-law after they'd taken $35,000 under false pretenses. Now I sat as temporary guardian to my granddaughters, their parents each facing life-altering legal consequences, our family forever changed by layers of deception I never could have imagined. My phone lit up with a text from Maxwell. "Judge signed off on final restitution agreement. Amanda's first payments to you and other family members will process next week. How are the girls settling in?" "As well as can be expected," I replied. "One day at a time." After a moment's hesitation, I added, "Any update on Derek's situation?" The response came quickly. "Witness protection looking increasingly likely given Calabresi's reaction to the raids. We'll know more tomorrow. Get some rest, Margaret. You've earned it." Rest seemed an unlikely prospect, as I carried the weight of not just my own shattered trust, but my granddaughter's fractured sense of security. Yet, as I prepared for bed, checking locks and security systems with newfound vigilance, I felt an unexpected sense of clarity amidst the chaos. The betrayal that had begun this journey had revealed not just criminal connections and financial fraud, but also my own resilience. The useless old woman they had dismissed at the airport had proven far more formidable than anyone, including perhaps myself, had anticipated. Whatever challenges the coming months would bring, I would face them with the same determination that had guided me since that first devastating discovery. Not just for my own sense of justice, but for the two young women now sleeping under my roof, depending on me to help them navigate the aftermath of their parents' choices. 2 months into our new living arrangement, routines began to establish themselves, not comfortable ones necessarily, but predictable patterns that provided some semblance of stability. The girls returned to school after a 3-week absence, during which a carefully crafted explanation about family medical issues had been provided to administrators. Special security protocols remained in place. FBI-approved transportation to and from school, check-in procedures, restricted social media usage, all constant reminders that our situation was far from normal. Amanda's supervised visitations occurred 3 times weekly. Awkward, emotionally charged hours at my home where she attempted to maintain some semblance of maternal authority while navigating her diminished role in her daughter's lives. To her credit, she adhered meticulously to every condition imposed by the courts and the restitution agreement, making timely payments, attending required therapy, and never once attempting to minimize or justify what she had done. "She's different," Olivia observed one evening after Amanda had left, "like she's smaller somehow." The observation was astute. Amanda's typical confidence and polish had given way to a quieter, more reflective demeanor. The designer clothes and perfect appearance had been replaced by simpler attire and minimal makeup. Whether this represented genuine transformation or simply the practical realities of her reduced circumstances remained unclear. Derek's situation had evolved more dramatically. Following his extensive cooperation with federal authorities, which had led to multiple arrests within Calabresi's organization, the threat assessment had been upgraded to severe and imminent. Witness protection became not just likely, but necessary, with all the life-altering implications that entailed. "Your father has made a difficult decision," the family liaison from the U.S. Marshals Service explained during a carefully orchestrated meeting with the girls. "He's chosen to enter the witness protection program to ensure his safety while continuing to assist with the ongoing investigation." "What does that actually mean?" Sophia asked, her voice steady despite the emotion evident in her eyes. "It means your father will receive a new identity, relocate to an undisclosed location, and begin building a new life under federal protection," the liaison explained gently. "This is necessary because of the serious nature of the case he's involved with." "Can we go with him?" Olivia asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "That's a complicated question," the liaison replied. "Typically, immediate family members can enter the program together, but given your parents' legal separation and your mother's ongoing legal obligations here, there are significant barriers." The unspoken reality hung heavily in the room. Derek would effectively disappear from their lives, at least for the foreseeable future. The choice was practically made for them. Amanda couldn't leave due to her legal restrictions, and I had been granted temporary guardianship specifically to provide stability. Uprooting the girls to follow Derek into witness protection would mean new names, new schools, complete severance from their existing lives and support systems. "So he's just gone?" Sophia's voice finally broke, the stoicism she'd maintained through weeks of upheaval cracking under this final blow. "He'll have opportunities for limited, secure communication," the liaison assured her. "But yes, for safety reasons, direct contact will be highly restricted." The girls' reactions to this news manifested in starkly different ways. Sophia retreated into herself, spending hours alone in her room, emerging only for meals and school with a carefully constructed facade of indifference that couldn't quite mask her pain. Olivia, by contrast, became my shadow, suddenly anxious about separation, seeking constant reassurance that I wouldn't similarly disappear. "Promise you're not going anywhere," she would say, night after night, as I tucked her in despite her protests that 15 was too old for such rituals. "I promise," I would reply, the words becoming a mantra between us. "Right here, as long as you need me." My own adjustment involved practical challenges I hadn't anticipated. After decades of living alone, I suddenly had 2 teenagers with distinct needs, preferences, and trauma responses under my roof. My neat, orderly home transformed overnight. Bathroom counters cluttered with teenage cosmetics, refrigerator contents disappearing at alarming rates. The quiet evening hours I'd once devoted to reading now filled with homework supervision and emotional support. Through it all, Maxwell remained a steadfast presence, handling not just the ongoing legal matters, but often serving as a calming influence for the entire household. His weekly visits to update me on case developments gradually evolved to include dinner with the girls, who found in this dignified, articulate man a stable male figure amidst the chaos of their father's absence. "Mr. Sullivan was friends with Grandpa, right?" Olivia asked one evening after he'd left. "They worked together?" "Yes," I confirmed, surprised she'd made the connection. "They were colleagues and close friends for many years. I like how he explains things," she continued thoughtfully. "He doesn't talk down to us or hide stuff because we're teenagers. He just says what's happening in a way that makes sense." This simple observation captured what had made Maxwell's presence so valuable: his ability to be straightforward without being harsh, to acknowledge difficult realities without causing unnecessary pain. Those qualities had been evident in his friendship with Robert decades earlier, and now they extended to Robert's granddaughters in their time of need. "He's been very helpful to all of us," I acknowledged, keeping my tone neutral despite the warmth I felt toward him. "Mom thinks you and Mr. Sullivan are dating," Sophia announced unexpectedly, emerging from her characteristic silence on the matter. I nearly dropped the dish I was drying. "What? Why would she think that?" Sophia shrugged, a hint of her old spark momentarily visible. "She mentioned it during visitation last week, said it was interesting timing, how he's suddenly around all the time." "That's—" I searched for words, flustered by the implication. "Maxwell and I have known each other for over 30 years. He's helping us navigate a complex legal situation, that's all." "If you say so," Sophia replied, the ghost of a smile playing at her lips before she retreated to her room. The conversation left me unsettled, not just by Amanda's apparent misinterpretation, but by my own defensive reaction. Maxwell's regular presence had indeed become something I looked forward to. His calm wisdom, his dry humor, his unwavering support through this ordeal. Yet I hadn't allowed myself to examine those feelings beyond appreciation for his professional guidance. 3 days later, I received a call from the U.S. Marshals Service liaison. "Mrs. Foster, we've arranged a final, secure communication opportunity between the girls and their father before he enters the program. It would occur tomorrow at a federal facility downtown, under controlled conditions." "In person?" I asked, surprised. "Video conference only," she clarified. "Mr. Foster has already been relocated to an interim facility pending his formal entry into the program. This represents the last guaranteed communication opportunity for some time." I immediately called the girls from their respective activities, Sophia at soccer practice, Olivia at her art therapy session, to inform them of the opportunity. Their reactions were predictably divergent. Sophia responded with terse acknowledgement, while Olivia dissolved into tears that mingled relief and grief. The following day, I sat in an austere waiting room while my granddaughters said goodbye to their father through a secure video connection. The Marshals Service had explained that they would have 30 minutes, after which Derek would be transported to his final relocation destination with his new identity. 30 minutes to say goodbye, potentially for years, possibly forever in any meaningful sense. The cruelty of it struck me anew, not for Derek's sake, but for the innocent girls caught in the crossfire of adult choices. When they finally emerged, Sophia's face was a mask of careful control, while Olivia's eyes were red and swollen from crying. Neither spoke as we were escorted to the car, waiting under federal protection. "He looks different," Olivia finally said as we drove home. "They changed his hair and made him wear glasses. Beginning the transformation," Sophia added flatly. "Soon he won't look like Dad at all." The implications hung heavily between us, not just physical changes, but the fundamental transformation of their father from the person they had known into someone else entirely. A new name, new history, new life disconnected from his daughters. "Did he say where he's going?" I asked gently. "No," Sophia replied. "He's not allowed to know yet himself. Said they'll tell him after he's en route. He said he'll try to send messages somehow," Olivia added, hope threading through her voice despite everything. "When it's safe," he promised. I nodded, not wanting to diminish this fragile comfort, while knowing such promises might prove impossible to keep. The Witness Protection Program existed precisely because of its effectiveness at severing all connections to previous lives. That evening, after the girls had finally retreated to their rooms, I sat on my back porch, staring into the darkness, attempting to process the extraordinary journey of the past few months. From the abandoned mother at the airport to the guardian of 2 traumatized teenagers, From the victim of family fraud to the stable center around which a shattered family now orbited, my phone lit up with a message from Maxwell. Just heard about today's meeting. How are the girls holding up? As well as can be expected, I replied. Sophia's withdrawn, Olivia's emotional. Standard operating procedure these days. After a moment's hesitation, I added, would you have time for coffee tomorrow? Just us. I could use a friend right now. His response came immediately. Name the time and place. I'll be there. As I prepared for bed that night, checking on each sleeping granddaughter, Olivia curled tightly around a pillow, Sophia sprawled as if in unconscious defiance, I reflected on how completely our lives had been transformed by what had initially seemed a simple betrayal. The $35,000 vacation contribution that had started this journey now seemed almost inconsequential compared to all that had followed. Federal investigations, witness protection, shattered family bonds, two teenagers looking to me as their primary source of stability and love. Yet amid the chaos and heartbreak, unexpected new beginnings were emerging. My deepening relationship with my granddaughters, their slow but perceptible steps toward healing, and perhaps even the possibility of connection with Maxwell beyond our professional association. Not the future any of us had envisioned, certainly, but one we would navigate together, day by day, building something new from the fragments of what had been broken. 1 year, Maxwell remarked, raising his coffee cup in a small toast. That's quite a milestone. We sat at a quiet table in the same cafe where we'd met for coffee the day after the girls' final video call with Derek. What had begun as a one-time need for friendly support had evolved into a weekly ritual. Saturday mornings together while the girls attended their respective activities. Sophia at her soccer league, Olivia at art therapy, followed by dance class. Sometimes it feels like a decade, I admitted, and other times like it all just happened yesterday. A year since the airport betrayal that had catalyzed such profound changes in all our lives. A year of guardianship, of rebuilding, of navigating a new normal none of us had chosen, but all had somehow adapted to with surprising resilience. How are the college visits going? Maxwell asked, seamlessly shifting to the current preoccupation in our household. Sophia, now in her senior year, was methodically evaluating universities within a 3-hour radius, her self-imposed boundary for distance from home. Mixed reviews so far, I replied. She loved the engineering program at State, but thought the campus felt too big. The smaller college had better vibes according to teenage criteria I can't quite decode, but their STEM offerings aren't as strong. Maxwell smiled, a warm expression that had become increasingly familiar over our months of regular contact. She'll figure it out. That young woman knows her own mind. Too well sometimes, I agreed with a rueful laugh, though I'm grateful she's considering schools nearby. I wasn't sure if she would want to put more distance between herself and everything. Everything, our shorthand for the complex aftermath we continued to navigate. Amanda's supervised visitation had evolved to unsupervised day visits, though the girls still lived primarily with me by mutual agreement. The restitution payments continued faithfully, with all family victims now fully compensated. Amanda herself had transformed in ways I would never have predicted, working as an administrative assistant at a non-profit organization helping families affected by incarceration. A position that fulfilled her community service requirements but had unexpectedly become a genuine calling. Derek's situation remained the most painful absence. In the year since entering witness protection, only 2 communications had reached the girls. Brief, carefully vetted letters forwarded through multiple security protocols. The generic messages, clearly composed under supervision to reveal nothing of his location or new identity, provided confirmation of his continued existence, but little emotional connection. Both girls had kept the letters, Sophia storing hers in a locked box, while Olivia slept with hers under her pillow for weeks before finally placing it in a special folder. The Calabrese trial begins next month, Maxwell noted, lowering his voice despite the private corner table we'd selected. The prosecutors believe Derek's recorded testimony will be sufficient without requiring his physical presence in court. That's something at least, I said. The prospect of Derek potentially emerging from hiding for the trial had created anxiety for all of us, not just security concerns, but the emotional upheaval such a brief reappearance might cause for the girls. They have a strong case, Maxwell assured me. Multiple cooperating witnesses, extensive financial documentation, electronic surveillance, Calabresi's attorneys have already made preliminary overtures about a potential plea agreement. This news represented a potential turning point. If Calabresi accepted a plea rather than proceeding to trial, it might eventually reduce the threat level enough for Derek to have more regular, if still restricted, communication with his daughters. A small hope, but meaningful for two teenagers still struggling to reconcile their father's virtual disappearance with their understanding of family. I haven't mentioned any of this to the girls, I said. I don't want to create expectations that might not materialize. Wise, Maxwell agreed, his hand briefly covering mine in a gesture that had become more frequent in recent months. Better to wait for concrete developments. The warmth of his touch lingered as our conversation shifted to lighter topics. Olivia's upcoming dance recital, the book club I had finally found time to join, Maxwell's plans for his approaching retirement from active legal practice. The easy rhythm of our exchange reflected the comfortable familiarity that had developed between us, a relationship neither of us had sought, but both now privately treasured. Later that afternoon, I helped Olivia prepare for her recital, marveling at how much she had grown in the past year. At 16, she still carried the emotional sensitivity that had always characterized her nature, but it had been tempered with a newfound resilience, a quiet strength developed through the crucible of family trauma. Nervous? I asked, helping pin her hair into the elaborate style required for her performance. A little, she admitted, but not as bad as last time. Ms. Chen says I've really improved my technique. She's right, I agreed, stepping back to examine my handiwork. You're becoming quite accomplished. Olivia studied her reflection in the mirror, her expression thoughtful. Grandma? Do you think Dad knows about my dancing? Like, do they tell him things about us in witness protection? The question caught me off guard, though I should have anticipated it. As the recital approached, a significant milestone in her development as a dancer, thoughts of her absent father would naturally intensify. I don't know for certain, I answered honestly, but I believe the Marshal's Service does provide general updates about family well-being when it's safe to do so, and we've mentioned your dancing in the letters we're allowed to send, even if we don't know if they reach him directly. She nodded, processing this. I like to think he knows, that he'd be proud. He would be, I assured her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. Incredibly proud, not just of your dancing, but of how brave you've been through all of this. A small smile touched her lips. You too, Grandma. You've been brave too. The simple observation, delivered with such straightforward sincerity, caught me by surprise. In focusing so intently on the girl's well-being through this ordeal, I'd rarely considered my own journey from betrayed mother to family cornerstone. We've all done our best, I said, giving her shoulders a gentle squeeze. Now, let's make sure we have everything for the recital. Sophia should be back from her college visit soon, and she's promised to take 50,000 photos of your performance. Only 50,000? Olivia teased, her mood lightening. She must be slacking. The recital itself was a triumph. Olivia executing her solo with a grace and confidence that brought tears to my eyes. In the audience, Sophia recorded every moment as promised, while Maxwell, invited as family without discussion or qualification, sat beside me with evident pride. Even Amanda, seated slightly apart but visibly moved, applauded with genuine enthusiasm for her daughter's achievement. After the performance, as Olivia accepted congratulations from her instructors and fellow dancers, a suited man I recognized as our U.S. Marshals Service liaison approached discreetly. Mrs. Foster, a moment? My heart immediately raced with concern. The liaison's appearances always signaled significant developments, not all of them positive. Is everything all right? I asked quietly, moving slightly away from the celebratory crowd. Everything's fine, he assured me. I've been authorized to deliver something to Olivia, a secure communication that passed all protocols. He handed me a small envelope, officially sealed. It's been thoroughly vetted. You can give it to her whenever you feel is appropriate. After he departed, I examined the envelope with trembling hands. The timing couldn't be coincidental, a communication arriving specifically on the day of Olivia's recital. Somehow, despite all the security barriers and restrictions, Derek had found a way to acknowledge this important milestone. I found Olivia surrounded by friends, her face flushed with success and excitement. Sweetheart, could I see you privately for a moment? Her expression immediately shifted to concern. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, I assured her, leading her to a quiet corner of the lobby. This was just delivered for you. A special communication that passed through all the security channels. Her eyes widened as she recognized the official envelope, hands shaking slightly as she accepted it. From Dad? Today? It appears so, I said gently. Would you like privacy to read it? She nodded, clutching the envelope tightly. Can you tell everyone I'll be right back? I watched as she slipped into an empty practice room, closing the door behind her. Through the small window, I could see her carefully opening the envelope, unfolding the contents, then pressing a hand to her mouth as emotion overwhelmed her. After several minutes, she emerged, eyes red, but with a smile of wonder transforming her face. He knew, she said simply, holding the letter against her heart. He knew about the recital. He's been receiving the updates all along, even though he couldn't respond often. And look, she carefully showed me a portion of the letter containing a small sketch of a dancer in mid-leap, remarkably similar to one of Olivia's signature moves. He remembered how I dance. The simple validation, knowing her father remained connected to her life despite his physical absence, seemed to heal something fundamental in my granddaughter's spirit. As she rejoined her friends, there was a lightness to her movements that transcended the success of her performance. Later that night, after celebrations had concluded and the girls had finally gone to bed, I found myself on the back porch with Maxwell, sharing a quiet moment under the stars. Quite a day, he observed, his shoulder comfortably touching mine as we sat side by side. Quite a year, I amended. He turned slightly, his expression serious, yet tender. Margaret, there's something I've been wanting to discuss with you. Oh? I responded, suddenly aware of the rapid beating of my heart. This past year has been challenging for all of you in ways few families ever experience, he began carefully. You've been focused entirely on the girls, on rebuilding stability, on navigating one crisis after another. I nodded, uncertain where this was leading. I've watched you handle everything with extraordinary grace and strength, he continued. And in the process, I found myself, he paused, uncharacteristically hesitant for a man usually so articulate. I've found myself caring for you in ways that go beyond our long friendship or professional association. The admission hung in the air between us. Momentous, yet somehow not surprising, a natural evolution of the connection that had been steadily deepening throughout this tumultuous year. Maxwell, I began, but he gently raised a hand. I'm not asking for anything or expecting any particular response, he assured me. I simply wanted you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, to consider your own happiness alongside your responsibilities to the girls, I would very much like to explore what might be possible between us. The thoughtfulness of his approach, acknowledging the primacy of my commitment to my granddaughters while still honestly expressing his feelings, epitomized the man he had always been, considerate, patient, unwavering in his support. I don't know what the future holds for any of us, I said finally. This past year has taught me not to take anything for granted, but I do know that your presence has been one of the few constants that's helped me navigate it all. I reached for his hand, intertwining our fingers in a gesture that felt both new and familiar. I'm not ready for grand decisions or declarations, but I am ready to acknowledge that whatever comes next, I'd like you to be part of it. His smile in response held a depth of understanding that required no additional words. We sat in companionable silence, hands linked, contemplating a future neither of us could have anticipated a year earlier. Inside the house, my granddaughter slept, Sophia with her college brochures scattered across her bed, Olivia with her father's letter carefully placed beside her pillow. Their lives had been irreversibly altered by their parents' actions, yet they were finding their ways forward, creating new dreams from the fragments of shattered expectations. And I, the useless old woman who had been so casually discarded at an airport, had discovered reserves of strength I never knew I possessed, becoming not just their guardian, but their anchor, their advocate, their constant in a world of uncertainty. The $35,000 that had initiated this journey seemed a small price to pay for the profound revelations it had ultimately yielded. The discovery of betrayal had led improbably to renewal. For my granddaughters, for myself, and for our understanding of what truly constitutes family, not the one we had expected perhaps, but one we were building together day by day with honesty, courage, and unexpected hope. Thank you so much for listening. Your presence means a lot to me. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to tell your story in the comments. Your voice matters.